Volcanoes are like giant time bombs of nature. When they awaken, almost nothing can stop the power they carry. They are one of the scariest sights that a person can witness on Earth. There are volcanoes so massive and powerful that when they erupt, they can change the entire world. And what's even more concerning is that not all of them are easy to spot. Some volcanoes are hidden beneath the sea. There are also some that are quiet and look just like ordinary mountains. But once they awaken, everything will change. One of the most powerful volcanic eruptions of this century happened just recently. In January 2022, a very powerful eruption occurred near the country of Tonga in the Pacific Ocean, northeast of New Zealand. The name of this volcano is Hunga Tonga, Hunga Ha'apai. And according to scientists, the force of this eruption was even greater than any nuclear bomb ever made by man. It was so powerful that the explosion was heard all the way to Alaska, even though it was almost 10,000 kilometers away. Not only that, a tsunami also occurred that crossed the entire Pacific Ocean all the way to Peru. And even though it was already so far away, the waves still reached almost 2 meters in height. For many geologists, this is already one of the strongest volcanic eruptions in modern history. But there's an even more surprising question. What if that wasn't the worst one yet? What if there are volcanoes on Earth that are many times more powerful? Volcanoes that can cause disasters capable of affecting the entire planet? In this video, we'll talk about how scientists measure the strength of volcanic eruptions. We'll also look at the ancient traces left behind by what are called supervolcanoes. And we'll also look at places in the world that could become extremely dangerous in the future. But before we continue, please like the video. Liking this video is a big help to us content creators. Thank you very much. First of all, how worried should we really be? And is it possible that someday Earth could experience an eruption even more terrifying than what happened in Tonga? To understand that, we first need to understand how science measures the strength of a volcano. Geologists use a system called the Volcanic Explosivity Index, or VEI. It's like a rating system to determine how powerful an eruption is, and it's not based on just one thing. Scientists look at the amount of rock and ash ejected by the volcano, how high the ash cloud reached, and how widespread the effects of the eruption were. The higher the VEI number, the more dangerous and powerful the eruption. Right now, most of the well-known eruptions in history are between 0 and 8 on this scale. VI. 0 is the weakest. This usually happens in volcanoes like Kilauea and Mauna Loa in Hawaii. In this type of eruption, the volcano doesn't explode very much. Instead, the lava just flows out slowly. Scientists call this an effusive eruption. This means that instead of a powerful explosion, the molten rock from inside the Earth just spills out. But even though it's calmer compared to other volcanoes, it's still dangerous. Because lava can engulf houses, roads, and entire communities as it moves slowly. And as the VEI scale goes higher and higher, eruptions become more dangerous. More ash, stronger explosions, and a wider area of destruction. But supervolcanoes are different and are among the highest on the scale. Its eruption is monstrous and can change the climate of the entire Earth. And according to some scientists, there may be some of them that are just sleeping right now, and they're just waiting for the right time to wake up again. Despite this, as the VEI scale increases, the effects of eruptions become even more terrifying. When you reach VEI 2, you'll see the kind of eruption that's happening right now at Mount Etna in Sicily, Italy. It has been active for many years and often spews lava and thick smoke. But when it goes up to VEI 3, the damage is on a whole different level. An example of this is the Soufriere Hills volcano on the Caribbean island of Montserrat. From 1996 to 1997, a large part of the island was almost buried in ash. Many people were forced to evacuate, and there were areas that were completely abandoned because they had become too dangerous. When it comes to VEI 4, its effects on the whole world are even greater. This is the level of eruption of the volcano in Iceland in 2010, with the very difficult to pronounce name Eyjafjallajökull. Even though this wasn't the strongest eruption in history, it still became a huge problem throughout Europe. Because of the extremely thick ash cloud, many flights were canceled for several weeks. Millions of passengers were stranded and air travel almost came to a halt in some parts of the world. But it turns out it's not that easy to give an eruption an exact VEI score. According to geologists, there are many factors that are hard to measure exactly. That's why sometimes there's still debate about what the correct rating is for a volcanic event. For example, the extremely powerful Tonga eruption in 2022. It is estimated that it ejected around 1.9 cubic kilometers of rock and debris. Meanwhile, the ash plume reached almost 58 kilometers high. Because of this, most scientists give it a VEI 5, but there are some volcanologists who believe that it should be classified as VEI 6 because of the extreme strength of the explosion. To better understand how big 1.9 cubic kilometers is, just imagine a very large open-pit mine. It's almost as big as the Mir diamond mine in Russia or the Bingham Canyon copper mine in the United States. And even though it's already that big, there have been eruptions even more intense than the Tonga event. This includes the eruption of Mount Pinatubo in 1991, right here in the Philippines. It was one of the strongest eruptions in the modern era. So much ash and particles rose into the atmosphere that even the Earth's climate was affected. According to scientists, the entire planet cooled slightly after the eruption because of the aerosols that spread in the stratosphere. Another well-known example is the eruption of Krakatoa in 1883. Its eruption was so powerful that it was reportedly heard thousands of kilometers away. Some scientists even believe that the unusual red sky after this eruption, the phenomenon became the inspiration for Edvard Munch in creating his famous painting, The Scream. But when it reaches VEI 7, that's when the real monster eruptions begin. These are called supercolossal eruptions. These are much worse compared to eruptions like Tonga. The most recent VEI 7 eruption in recorded history happened in 1815 at Mount Tambora. Thousands of people died near the volcano. But what happened afterward was even more terrifying. Because of the huge amount of ash and particles that rose into the atmosphere, the climate of the entire Earth was affected. The following year, 1816, was called the Year Without a Summer. The world's average temperature dropped by almost half a degree Celsius. And even though that may sound small, it caused the destruction of crops, food shortages, and hunger in different countries. And according to history, VEI 7 eruptions are extremely rare. Before the Tambora eruption, you would have to go back to the year 1257 to find a disaster of the same level. This was the eruption of the Samalas volcano, another volcano in Indonesia. But there was something even more terrifying than this. If the strongest eruptions in human history are only VEI 7, then what about VEI 8? This is where what we call supervolcanoes come in. These eruptions are what volcanologists call supervolcanic eruptions. And this is where the scale of destruction really starts to feel like the end of the world. A supervolcanic eruption can spew out more than 1,000 cubic kilometers of material. That's more than 20 times bigger than the Tambora eruption, and almost 500 times bigger than the Tonga eruption in 2022. When this happens, a massive ash cloud rises up to the stratosphere, and the ash and chemicals spreading in the atmosphere can destroy the atmosphere. Supervolcanoes are not just ordinary natural disasters. When one of them awakens, it's possible for the whole world to be affected. Fortunately, supervolcanic eruptions are extremely rare. According to scientists, this usually happens only once every tens of thousands of years. And because of this, there are only a few true supervolcanoes on Earth. Right now, it's estimated that there are only around 20 known supervolcanoes. And there's a reason why they're so rare. A supervolcano doesn't just form easily. Very special conditions are needed beneath the Earth. There has to be a massive amount of thick and extremely hot magma accumulating underground. And this magma must contain a lot of trapped gases under intense pressure. It's like a giant pressure cooker that slowly fills up over thousands of years. And when the pressure can no longer be contained, that's when a super eruption about happens. Because it's so rare, no person or scientist has ever witnessed an actual supervolcanic eruption. There are also no historical records from modern civilization about this. This means that what we know about supervolcanoes comes only from the traces they left on Earth thousands of years ago. It's like they're detectives investigating an ancient crime, but there are no witnesses. That's why geologists just piece together the clues left in rocks, ash, and soil to understand how super eruptions really work. And one of the most important clues can be found in New Zealand. The most recent supervolcanic eruption known to science happened about 26,000 years ago on the North Island of New Zealand. And surprisingly, a supervolcano doesn't actually look like a normal volcano. When we think of a volcano, we usually imagine a pointed mountain like Mayan volcano. But a supervolcano is a different kind. Because its magma chamber underground is so huge, when it erupts and the contents below decrease, a large part of the ground above actually collapses. And because of this, a massive crater called a caldera is formed. The former site of a super eruption in New Zealand is now a huge lake called Lake Taupo. This lake is around 186 meters deep and almost 46 kilometers wide at its widest part. This means that the calm lake we see today was once the site of one of the most powerful explosions in Earth's history. But there's an even more famous and scarier example. Around 74,000 years ago, the Toba supervolcano erupted on the island of Sumatra in Indonesia. This was one of the most violent volcanic eruptions in the entire history of the planet. Just like Taupo, the giant crater left by the Toba eruption was eventually filled with water and became a huge lake. But Toba was much more intense. If the New Zealand super eruption spewed out more than 1,000 cubic kilometers of material, the Toba eruption possibly released more than twice that amount. And according to some scientists, it might have been even more than we think. It's really hard to imagine just how big 1,000 cubic kilometers is. But just imagine a giant cube of rock and ash that's almost as tall as Mount Everest. And no matter how big you imagine it, it's still not enough to describe the true scale of the eruption. But the Toba supervolcano didn't just release rock and ash. All magma on Earth contains different kinds of gases. This includes sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, water vapor, and other chemicals. And these gases are one of the most important reasons why an eruption becomes explosive. As magma rises from beneath the Earth to the mouth of the volcano, the pressure decreases. When the magma is runny or thin, like in Hawaiian volcanoes, the gases can easily escape, so the eruption is calmer. But when the magma is thick and very dense, like in Toba and other supervolcanoes, the gases get trapped inside. And as the pressure keeps dropping, the trapped gases suddenly explode. It's like a bottle of soda that you've shaken for a long time and then suddenly opened. Because of the intense pressure, the lava gets torn apart and crushed into tiny particles. Some turn into fine ash, while others become giant chunks of rock. And this is where the more terrifying effects begin, because the tiny ash particles can stay in the atmosphere for many years. They block sunlight and cool the Earth. But according to scientists, there's something even more dangerous than ash. It's sulfur dioxide. When this gas reaches the atmosphere, it reacts with oxygen and water, and it forms tiny droplets of sulfuric acid and other aerosols. The problem is, these aerosols can stay in the stratosphere for almost a decade. While they're up in the atmosphere, they reflect sunlight back into space. And when less heat reaches the Earth, the temperature of the whole planet goes down. Scientists call this a volcanic winter. And according to studies, when this happened after the Toba super eruption 74,000 years ago, the volcano released a huge amount of sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. And even though it's hard to separate its effects from the normal climate cycles of the Earth, Scientists have evidence that this may have been followed by almost a century of intense climate cooling. In fact, there's another terrifying theory about the Toba super eruption. According to some scientists, it's possible that its severe impact on the climate was the reason why early humans on Earth almost became extinct. They call this the Toba catastrophe hypothesis. Based on some archaeological and genetic studies, there is a possibility that after the eruption, the human population around the world dropped drastically. It's possible that only a few thousand people were left. That means there was a time in history when all the people on the planet could have fit inside a large concert hall. But until now, scientists are still debating about this. Some believe that the Toba eruption wasn't strong enough to cause a prolonged volcanic winter across the entire Earth. There are also others who doubt whether the human population was really that small during that time. But even if not all the details are certain yet, one thing is clear. If a similar super eruption happened in the modern world today, the effects on agriculture and the food supply of the entire planet would be extremely severe. Just imagine if the sky is covered with ash for a long time, the heat and light from the sun will decrease. And if that happens, many crops won't grow properly. There could be widespread food shortages in different countries. So it's only natural to ask, how worried should we really be? For now, we know that super eruptions are extremely rare. In the last 100,000 years, there have only been 2 known super eruptions on Earth. Toba in New Zealand and Toba in Indonesia. And if you travel even further back in time from the Toba eruption, the next major super eruption you'll find is another eruption of Taupo about 340,000 years ago. But according to geologists, this doesn't mean that we can relax, be complacent, because even after their biggest eruptions, both Toba and Taupo still had smaller eruptions. And there's also no evidence that these 2 supervolcanoes are extinct. Both of them are located in what's called the Pacific Ring of Fire. This is the vast region around the Pacific Ocean where earthquakes and volcanic activity often occur. This is where the Earth's giant tectonic plates push and collide with each other. As the oceanic crust sinks into the planet's mantle, magma is formed, which drives many volcanoes. And according to scientists, it is really possible that one day, even if thousands of years have passed, there could be another catastrophic super eruption in one of these places. But it's not just Toba and Taupo that we should watch out for. There are other supervolcanoes in the world with a history of VEI-8 eruptions. Many of them are found in the Andes region of South America, especially in Chile, Bolivia, and Argentina. There are signs of volcanic activity in some of these places. For example, there are instances where the ground gradually rises. And according to geologists, this could be an indication that magma is accumulating again underneath. But for now, there is still no evidence that a super eruption is imminent there. One of the most closely monitored volcanic regions on Earth can be found in North America. This is the famous Yellowstone hotspot in Yellowstone National Park. This is one of the most active volcanic systems on the planet, and scientists monitor it every day. Up to now, geologists are still not completely sure where the magma of Yellowstone really comes from. Some believe that it comes from a very deep magma plume inside the Earth. Others think that it is connected to a sunken part of the ocean crust beneath North America. But whatever the real cause is, one thing is certain. This place is extremely dangerous. According to studies, the Yellowstone hotspot has experienced 6 VEI-8 eruptions in the past 10 million years. And the most recent one happened about 640,000 years ago. Those eruptions formed the giant Yellowstone caldera, which is now part of the national park. And if that happens again now, it's possible that large parts of Wyoming would be destroyed.
Ning, Idaho at Montana.
A superheated cloud of rock, ash, and toxic gas would spread at hundreds of kilometers per hour. And in more distant areas, thick ash would fall from the sky. It's possible that travel by cars and airplanes would come to a halt. Some roofs of houses and buildings could collapse under the weight of the ashfall. And that's not all. The ash and sulfur particles that would spread in the atmosphere could cause a severe cooling of the global climate. Just like what possibly happened after the Toba eruption 74,000 years ago, some scientists believe that the temperature in many parts of the Earth could drop by several degrees Celsius. Because of this threat, scientists continuously monitor Yellowstone. They are already checking for changes in the ground, an increase in earthquakes, or unusual volcanic gases being released, because those could be signs that magma is moving underneath. But there's a problem. The Yellowstone region is very active even on normal days. There are almost always small earthquakes and changes in the ground there. And because no one has ever actually witnessed how a real super eruption begins, scientists still aren't sure what the exact warning signs are before it happens. There are estimates saying that the chance of the Yellowstone supervolcano erupting in any given year is around 1 in 730,000. But according to geologists themselves, that's not how volcanoes work. They don't follow a schedule. You can't say that an eruption is late or about to happen just based on the average time. For now, scientists are confident that there are no signs of enough magma in Yellowstone to cause a super eruption anytime soon. But even so, there are still many other places on Earth with giant calderas and a history of massive eruptions. And even if a future eruption doesn't reach VEI 8, it can still be catastrophic for the local region. One of the places that scientists often monitor is the Phlegraean Fields near Naples, Italy. It is a massive volcanic area full of calderas. It is located near Mount Vesuvius, the volcano that buried the ancient Roman city of Pompeii in 79 AD. And even though what happened in Pompeii was already devastating, according to scientists, the Phlegraean Fields could potentially unleash an eruption hundreds of times more powerful if it awakens again. Nevertheless, there is another terrifying theory about a massive eruption that happened around 39,000 years ago. Some scientists believe that the severe climate effects of this eruption may have contributed to the disappearance of the Neanderthals in Europe. The Neanderthals were an ancient type of human who once lived alongside the first modern humans. And it's surprising that they disappeared from Europe almost at the same time as that major eruption. But just like the Toba catastrophe hypothesis, this is still being debated up to now. There are scientists who believe that the eruption is really connected to the disappearance of the Neanderthals, while others say that there is still not enough evidence to prove that. But even if everything is still uncertain, one thing is clear. When a supervolcano awakens, it's not just one country that can be affected. It's possible that even the history of the entire civilization could change. And right now, one of the most closely monitored places in Europe is the Phlegraean Fields. In recent years, earthquakes and other ground movements in this area have reportedly become more frequent. And according to volcanologists, this could be a sign that there are changes happening beneath the surface. Although the chance of a major eruption is still low, the situation is serious enough for authorities to create evacuation plans for more than 1 million residents around Naples. But it's not just Italy that has reason to worry. Another place that scientists often talk about is the Greek island of Santorini. Today it is known as one of the most beautiful tourist destinations in the world. When you look at it from above, the island is shaped like a crescent or a half moon. But what many tourists don't know is that the whole place is actually part of a giant volcanic caldera. This means that the beautiful island we see today is actually the remains of a massive explosion from ancient times. The eruption that formed this wasn't technically a super eruption because it was lower than VEI 8. But make no mistake, its effects were still extremely severe. This happened around 1600 BC, and it destroyed a large part of the eastern Mediterranean. There was even a giant tsunami tens of meters high that hit the island of Crete. And according to some historians, it's possible that this disaster contributed to the fall of the ancient Minoan civilization. There are even theories that this might have been the inspiration for the legend of Atlantis. To this day, Santorini is still volcanically active. but there hasn't been an eruption that comes close to the strength of what happened before. Scientists continue to monitor it for any signs of danger, and according to them, the question isn't if the volcano will erupt again, but when. For now, there's no evidence that a massive eruption will happen anytime soon. But even so, that doesn't mean there's no danger, because the truth is, one day, Santorini, or Phlegraean Fields, or Yellowstone, or Taupo, or one of the other supervolcanoes on Earth could erupt again. And if that happens, the impact will definitely be huge. It's just like a giant asteroid impact. The chance of it happening in any given year is low. But we know that it's really possible, and when that day comes, the world will face a massive disaster. In fact, just recently, scientists have once again become concerned about Santorini. In February 2025, many people were temporarily evacuated from the island after hundreds of earthquakes struck there. According to officials on Wednesday, February 5, 2025, more than 11,000 people left Santorini. Around 7,000 evacuated by ferry, while almost 4,000 left by airplane. The strongest earthquake at that time reached magnitude 5. Because of this, the scientific investigation in the area accelerated. Now, scientists want to know how dangerous the possible next big one could really be. In April 2025, the British research ship RRS Discovery also arrived in the region. It was led by Professor Isabel Yo, together with her team of 22 scientists. Their mission was to study what kind of seismic activity could serve as a warning sign before an eruption occurs. While this video is being made, their research continues in the sea near Santorini. They work 12-hour shifts to better understand the volcanic system beneath the ocean. And about 300 meters below the research ship, there are boiling hydrothermal vents. These are cracks in the seafloor where extremely hot water and volcanic gases come out. Because of this, the bottom of the sea looks orange due to the heat, rocks, and thick smoke coming from beneath the earth. The team also sends a robot down to the seabed to collect samples, gases and rock samples. Their goal is to create a more detailed map of the hydrothermal system beneath Santorini. They even use electromagnetic fields to see how fluids move inside the rocks underground. With this, they are able to create a three-dimensional map that shows how the hydrothermal system is connected to the magma chamber of the volcano. This information will be used by the Greek Civil Protection Agency to create hazard maps and emergency plans in case an eruption happens in the future. This will also help determine which areas need to be avoided or evacuated when the situation becomes dangerous. But this is where the scarier question comes in. If this happens in our time, how early can we get a warning? Will scientists be able to immediately recognize the signs before the disaster happens? The problem is, no one in recorded history has ever witnessed a real supervolcanic eruption. And because of that, it's possible that there are warning signs we still don't fully understand. Most of what we know about volcanoes actually comes from smaller eruptions. And even with normal volcanoes, scientists still have a hard time predicting exactly when they will erupt. Take the Tonga eruption in 2012 as an example. Before the massive explosion happened, there were almost a month of smaller eruptions first. And 15 minutes before the strongest eruption, there was even an earthquake. But at that time, scientists didn't immediately realize that was already a sign of a major VEI 5 eruption. It was only after the disaster that they realized how important that earthquake was. And this becomes even more difficult because most of the major volcanoes are in regions where there are earthquakes and volcanic activity almost every day. In other words, that kind of geological unrest is just normal there. It's also possible that what's happening beneath giant calderas is very different compared to ordinary volcanoes. That's why it's even harder to predict the next move of a supervolcano. And even if we say that it's possible to predict a super eruption 1 month before it happens, that might be enough time to evacuate the people in the immediate danger zone. But 1 month is not enough to prepare the whole world for its effects on climate and agriculture. Because if the global food supply is affected, the whole planet could feel the impact for many years. That's why scientists continue to study supervolcanoes on Earth up to now. They continuously observe active volcanic regions and study ancient eruptions to better understand what might happen in the future. And if you live in areas like the Phlegraean fields, which have a high volcanic risk, experts say it's important to be prepared in case evacuation is needed. For most of us, all we can do is hope that we won't experience in our lifetime one of the biggest disasters that the Earth can create.